Hello everyone and welcome back to the Commodore Room. Hope everybody's having a great day. As a lot of you know watching this channel, the Commodore 64 is one of my favorite machines and also one of the most popular computers ever made. The numbers vary a little bit from source to source, but somewhere around 10 to 20 million of these devices were made and sold throughout its lifetime. It looked a little bit different with the 64C, but basically it was the same machine that we all know and love. This year, we have a new entrant into the gaming world, and this is the Sony PlayStation 5. As my son tells me, this is the system to have, and it's the best thing ever made to play video games, and nothing compares to it, and this, that, and the other. So what I decided to do was pit these two against each other, and let's see, based on a number of criteria, which platform is really the best. I think you'll find this objective and fair comparison really will highlight the strengths of each platform and then let you decide once and for all which system really is the best. So if you've watched some of our game reviews, you know that shelf appearance and appeal is a big deal to buyers. And so we're going to look at the boxes just real quick on both of these guys. This is the PS5 box. Clearly they've copied the white look from the 64C computers that came out in the mid-80s, and so that's good. They're copying something that Commodore blazed the trail on, and it's a nice clean look. They've also included this little handle here at the top. Let me put you up here so you can see it. This handle here is necessary because it's so darn heavy that you could kill a small child if you were to drop it, and I'm sure their lawyers made them do this just for liability reasons, because you really need a safe way to transport this thing because of the size and just sheer weight of it. But it's not a bad box, but it's clearly copied off of what Commodore did back in the mid-80s. So here we have an example of a Commodore 64 box. Obviously it's pretty old, so it's a little bit beat up, but you get an idea of what you get here on the front. They're using a lot of color. Back in the 80s that was a big deal for folks, and really was a very attractive box. It showed you something with sound, which was pretty revolutionary at the time, and the memory and things like that. In later years, Commodore evolved into the white box of the 64C, which is obviously, as we discussed, what the PlayStation 5 has copied. So I might give the edge to the PlayStation folks on this one. The PS5 box, I think, is a little bit cleaner look, and again, was pioneered by Commodore. I think one reasonable place to start is just the physical size and dimensions of these systems. So as you'll see here, the Commodore 64 weighs in at 3 pounds 12 ounces. Certainly not heavy, but not exactly light, but really a good, reasonable weight. You can put this guy down and use it right away without worrying about straining your back or hurting yourself because it's overly heavy. And next we have the PS5. Aside from looking like something out of The Empire Strikes Back, the PS5 is not what I would call a lightweight. As you can see here, this thing weighs 10 pounds 2 ounces. This thing is ginormous. It's really, really tall. It's really, really heavy. This thing is so big, bulky, and awkward, it needs a special stand just so it can be on your desk. So I'm going to have to give this to the Commodore 64. It's much lighter, much easier to move around, and really is not a safety risk if you decide to move it on your desk. I think the next reasonable point of comparison will be controllers. Commodore 64 did not come with its own controller, as everyone knows, but you had a lot of options available. So here on the left we have the standard Atari 2600 joystick that everybody's familiar with. These joysticks are incredibly easy to operate. You've got your 4 directions and a button. It's very, very simple. No training required, nothing fancy here, but a good solid joystick. My personal favorite, of course, the Epix 500 XJ, high performance joystick. Good feedback with the micro switches. Really just good, both of these are just really good joysticks that don't require anything special to use. The other nice thing about the Commodore 64 is there are a lot of controllers. The standard controller interface, the DB9, as you can see there, was incredibly popular and still is to this day. And there are just so many joysticks available. You can go out and find something that fits your hand, your style, and your taste. So when it comes to controllers, you've got a great deal of options with the Commodore 64. Here we have the controller for the PS5. All kinds of interesting buttons and clicks and pushes. I guess this is some sort of touch thingy. Lots going on here. It's not horrible. Not really the easiest thing to use. It's kind of beefy. The one interesting thing with this joystick is you have to charge it. You can't just pick it up and always play it. You might have to charge it. It might be dead. And I did look around, and I honestly could not find another controller that works with this thing. I mean, this is it. Your options are pretty limited. If this doesn't fit your style or your hand or whatever, then I guess you're out of luck or something. I don't know. The other thing about this that to me is a negative is the price. This thing's like $70. Well, it does come with one, which is nice. $70 is just a lot of money for a controller. And I know back when I was a kid, these things got flung across the room and maybe thrown at your little sister or whatever. So I wouldn't want to do that with a $70 controller. So while I think the controller is okay, it's not horrible, I think the edge is clearly to the Commodore 64. Another great point of comparison is just versatility of these devices. Commodore 64, of course, is a fantastic game machine, and you can do a lot of other things with it as well. You can certainly go on here and type, do spreadsheets, do your homework if you want to. I can tell you when I was in college, I spent a lot of time writing papers using GEOS on a Commodore 64. And so a pretty versatile machine you could use for entertainment. You can actually use to get some work done, do papers, things like that. Going back to the PS5, not a lot of options for versatility here. Certainly can plug in a keyboard, and I guess you could type your password or something, but you certainly can't do anything else. There's no spreadsheets that I could find, no word processor. Certainly can't use this thing to do my homework or anything useful like that. So while it is a decent game machine, the versatility is just not there. It is sort of a one-trick pony, which is not surprising and not a bad thing if that's what you're into. To me, the edge clearly goes to the Commodore 64. So what we have here are 3 of the games for the PS5 that we have, and this represents about 15% of all available games for the PS5. Sony worked really hard making this machine, and I guess at some point somebody will make some games for it, or at least a few other people, but right now the game selection is incredibly limited. On the Commodore 64, depending on what source you use, there was anywhere between 3,000 to 20,000 different titles available for the machine. I'm pretty confident that Sony will never see that many titles available for the PS5. And I know some people will say, well, wait a minute, it's backwards compatible. Well, you know, the Commodore 64 is backwards compatible with a lot of VIC-20 and PET software titles as well. So we're not even going to count those, or the numbers just go up a lot more than that. So again, there's not a lot available for the PS5, and quite clearly this is no contest. The Commodore 64 is clearly the machine to have in that regard.
And now for the most important part of our comparison, that's actually playing some games. So I went ahead and popped in one of the games that we have, Planet Coaster, and got ready to play. Except for I had to wait for it to load. They say the Commodore 64 has slow disk drives, and we've talked about that on this channel before. But holy cannoli, this took forever to load. I thought this was modern technology. Haven't they improved this? Can I get a fast load cartridge for this thing? So eventually, the game did actually load, and then it wanted to download something from the internet to update itself. So after countless minutes, it finally loaded, and I was able to get in. As you can see, the PS5 does have some decent graphics, and the sound is pretty good too. It can do a lot of the same things the Commodore can do, and maybe a little bit more. I would probably give the edge ever so slightly to the PS5. As you can see here, some of the games look pretty cool. The loading, there's something to be talked about there. The loading time is enormous, even compared to the Commodore, which is nearly 40 years old. So there's room for improvement for sure. But if you do happen to get one of the handful of games that are available, they do look pretty good, and they're not bad. So I'll give this one to the PS5.
And so there you have it. I was going to keep going and look at things such as power consumption and reception in the market, but really, there was really no point, and there's no reason to rub it in. Sony did a good job. They made a neat little box, or a neat big box, as the case may be, and they worked really hard on it, and they should be commended for that. It's certainly not bad, but it's no Commodore 64. I hope everyone enjoyed this fair and unbiased comparison of these two platforms. At least now I don't have to listen to my son tell me how great the PS5 is compared to the Commodore 64. In case you didn't know, the Commodore Room is now on Instagram at, you guessed it, the Commodore Room. If you like this video, feel free to give us a thumbs up. If you like this sort of content and you're into the Commodore 64 like we are, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you didn't like it, feel free to give us a thumbs down and tell us why. I hope you enjoyed your visit to the Commodore Room today, and I hope you'll come hang out in the Commodore Room again with us real soon.